Hello everybody, more detailed tutorial on Philogix PBR Painter Pro version 3.1. We're also going to be going over a metalness and or metallic workflow versus a specular workflow. Both could end up with the same results, but I'll highlight some of the major differences for you throughout the video, and we'll do a dual comparison between the two. We'll do one with a metallic and one with a specular workflow, completely separate and different, and kind of familiarize you, and that way you can figure out what you're actually going to need. So your PBR workflows or physically based shading workflows are going to be dependent on what you need. So the company and or companies that use this, where you may be required to put in PBR textures, and they may say we want metallic or we want specular workflows. It's obviously a pretty hot topic, and so the results are going to be, in the workflow you choose, are going to be dictated by your need. On the left, we're going to be implementing the metalness or metallic PBR shader workflow, which is going to contain it has a need for a base color, and then of course the metallic and the roughness. The general makeup of the metallic is color, microsurface, and metalness. And the specular workflow is made up of color, microsurface, and specularity, where we're using a diffuse in place of the base color and a specular and a glossiness to achieve very similar results to the metallic workflow. And metallic maps are only black and white to show the reflection, whether the surface is metallic or non-metallic. Also, in the metallic workflow, when I'll show examples soon, the color of the metal comes from the base color, which has been shown in a number of tutorials that I've done, where we'll add a base color and then we can shift it with the metallic channel. This allows the metallic workflow to have a higher compression and not have as much loss of detail. However, in the specular map, it will have colors where the metal should be instead. So in a specular workflow, the color of the metal will come from the specular map, not the base color. In this difference, we can see the metallic workflow, and I'll just put an M here for that, versus the specular workflow. These maps are baked at the exact same resolution. They both have the exact same base, and they have the exact same color. Only the metallic workflow has a roughness setting that controls the reflection. And if I come over to the specular workflow, the roughness isn't controlled here, even though the material is the same. So there's your first difference. Now, if I go under the specular map and add the same thing, but just add a basic color, now I can make it the same color as it is over here, and you can see I begin to control the reflectivity. A better example of this can be seen if we look at the individual maps. So I'll go from the materials panel to the diffuse, and I can effectively see what the base color of that would look like. Then I can go from the diffuse to the specular map, which is where we would get our reflections from. And one indication that you're dealing with a specular map instead of a metalness map is that it's completely black. So if I bring up the opacity you can see where our reflectiveness will be coming from. Now if I go to the glossy or glossiness, you'll see that this is actually not reflective. And let me try to explain this a little bit better. So if you have a reflection bouncing light off the reflectiveness, the glossy is going to take some of that and turn it into like a, almost like a surface fuzz, if you will. And some of that's going to remain on the surface, whereas the actual reflective will bounce off with the reflectiveness. So that's a slight difference in that. And so that's how you would achieve it in a specular map. And if we look at the metallic workflow, then if you went from material to base, you can see the base color, but that's where you're going to be getting the origin of the actual roughness and so on. So let's go down to the actual metallic setting itself. And I don't have anything on the metallic channel, so I'll just add a basic custom layer. I'll add a no color setup to it, and we can change the opacity here and kind of mess around with that. And that gives you your control. Now if we switch over to the roughness, which is going to be how much light is either absorbed or reflected, and we can mess around with that as well. And I'll go to the roughness channel, and as you see, I don't have anything really working for me, so I'm going to drop in a layer for this channel, and you can increase and or decrease the roughness. And if we go back out to our material, now we can see a lot has actually changed since we began to mess with this. And I can bring the opacity up or down for the roughness, making it reflect everything or reflect nothing. I can go to the metallic and increase and or decrease the metallic properties of the material. So ultimately, think of the roughness map is the same as the gloss map, only the gloss doesn't reflect the light as much as it will absorb it on the surface and does not control the amount of reflectivity. The reflectivity is controlled by the specular map, whereas the roughness will control for the metallic workflow how much light is either absorbed or bounced back, and then the metallic will control the metallic properties. Now another way to tell kind of what's going on and what type of software you might be using or your needs, what we can do is switch over to the shader editor. And for the example, you can see that the principal BSDF, the color is going in to the BSDF, whereas you also have a metallic and a specular. The easiest way to tell with any software you're using, or understanding why this has a metallic and a specular, is to denote that this is yellow with a color input, which is going to be the base. And then your metallic and your specular are both gray, indicating a grayscale value. So when you go to input this, it's still going to be under the metallic workflow. And it's always suggested that you leave the specular on this at 0.5 and don't mess with it, unless you intend to for a specific result you're trying to achieve. For my current and next example, I'm going to be hiding out the specular workflow. And what we can do is, let's go over this thing a little bit, modify it, and I'm going to take all of the different layers I have off of here and kind of start from the beginning. I'll click New Pick Shader. I'll go with the Metallic Workflow. I'm going to keep it basic and hit OK. Then you can bake out your textures. I'm going to stay at 1024 and a quality of 4 and then bake this out. I can close this up and then enjoy the real-time bake, and I will see you on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and add a base color. You can choose anything that you want. Make sure to go over and click base, so we're adding this to the base. Now you can choose anything you want. I'm going to go back with the aluminum. Alright, done with the bake. I'll go ahead and add a layer in. Make sure you're on the base. I'm going to switch my projection to box for this particular model. And I'm going to go something like fabric. You could change the color to anything that you want, or you could choose something different. I think I'll just brighten this up a little bit. And what I want to do is blend this in. And the blending, of course, is going to take the corners, the edges, the X, Y, Y, the X, Y, the Y, X, and the X, Y, Z areas, and all the different sides in the 3D viewport of your model, and blend the textures together to remove harsh seams and harsh corners. So the blend option works very nice for what we're doing. You could also scale this in and out as you see fit. And what I want to do now is I'm just going to add a layer, which would be a custom layer. And I'm going to come down to paint. I'll drop down a paint layer. Now under image panel, I'll click new. Now I only baked with the 1024, so I'll highlight these and I'll put a /2 enter, and it'll put it to 1024, and I'll just hit OK. Then I'm going to grab the opacity slider and bring that down just a touch, and we can re-add this color back and play with the opacities later if this isn't bright enough for you. I'll go to the paint panel, go ahead and click paint, and then you click the brushes here. What you can do is come over to the seam. Now I want to change the color, something nice and bright, like red, just for the example. So if I take this and I left this on UV and I just paint, it's painting one stitch because the brush is so big. So the smaller I bring this down, the more it's going to paint. It's very precise even with the mouse, so I would imagine if you're using a nice drawing pad with a pen, that the pen pressure is going to really provide some accuracy. With a little bit of a zoom in here, and the size, when you go to zoom, that's obviously changing the size of the brush as well. So if you want that to be any particular way on the size, just note that's going to change. As you see, my line is now not the same. So to avoid those frustrations, get it locked in where you're going to do your drawing. And then you can begin to stitch in all different colors, all different sizes. And I think this would work really nice if you were actually going to put in like a nice bright darkish yellow. And I think you could paint a street very nicely with this, so you wouldn't just be making stitches. Okay, so this is a seam, and the seam is going to have some of the same features that the actual other textures will have, and so you can kind of move these around as you see fit. So I'll just have a little bit of fun here and maybe make the brush very small and get my white line in here. And now I've got this neat little street, if you will, going across the top. Now for another example, I'll go back to the base area, add another custom layer. Let's make this another paint. So I'll come in and hit OK. Everything will go black, but I'm going to pull the opacity back just a little bit. I'm going to go in and select the screw menu. Now if I shift right click, I can make this bigger. And if I hit the right mouse, I can move it around. The size of the brush is going to be indicative of how well this turns out. So I could choose a nice bright color, kind of go in here. And like I said, these things are going to work tremendous with pen pressure and pen. There we go. So now if I click finish, I've got this nice screw kind of painted on here. And this can all be obviously cleaned up. You can see how intense that is if I pull all the way up. So there's a way, and I'll show you guys in the next tutorial how to re-add back your same color, bring this brightness all the way up, and really not worry about that. And of course, just remember, if you're moving these materials like these stitches up in the value system, and you keep moving them up, they will pop up at the top. And then you can kind of work from there. And so if I bring that opacity back, now the stitches are nice and bright. I've got the texture back, but there's also another way of doing it. And like I said, I'll show you in the next tutorial. I really appreciate you guys watching. And like I said, we're just scratching the surface of how amazing this is. You can say goodbye to the need for Substance Painter. You can say goodbye to needing to export this to somewhere else if you're in the habit of it or you're in the industry. And maybe your company isn't going to allow you to do that, then you may still have to do that from time to time. But you're not going to absolutely have to, especially if you're learning this and you're freelance. You get to call the shots, and now you've got a very powerful software coming. Once the beta testing is done, make sure to smash that subscribe, smash that like button. And if you wanted to come over and pick up Philogix PBR Painter Pro, it's on the Blender Market, $35.50. It is an amazing buy. You buy it one time and it's going to be continuously updated, and you get all those updates for free. It's got a 5-star rating. It's tremendous what you can do. The updates, like I said, I've only covered about maybe 10% of them. So support this channel and support the Blender Market. And I will see you in the next tutorial lesson.